Welcome to the Great Loop aboard the Perch. I'm Kim Russo, the director of America's Great Loop Cruisers Association, and this is leg 52 of our Great Loop adventure. Today we're finishing up the Trent-Severn waterway. We are locking through at Big Chute Marine Railway, hitting one other lock, and then working our way over to Midland. So if you watched the previous video of leg 51, you know we arrived at Big Chute, but we're unable to lock through because there was a backlog from a short closure during the day. So we spent the night on the Blue Line at Big Chute, so we were ready to head on to Big Chute the next morning. So this is us driving up onto the carriage. You can see that there is already a boat in front of us, and those yellow straps you can see are what is going to secure us from tipping over, basically. So pontoon boats or catamarans that can sit flat on the bottom of the carriage there are able to do so. And then boats like ours have the straps to help support. You can see the lockmaster walking by there. There are 4 of them, I believe, and they stand on that section the entire time. So they're taking the ride across with you. And you can see now that the cart is kind of pulling us up out of the water along the track there. So we're no longer submerged and floating. We are now resting on the bottom of the carriage and supported by the straps. It's a pretty amazing ride. You can see that as you get through the top of the hill, you are now crossing an active roadway. So when we were crossing, there were no cars waiting, but this is just like any train track crossing that you might come across, where there's gates that come down and lights that flash and bells that ring, and the cars have to stop and literally wait for this carriage to drive across the road on the track with the boats aboard. So it's a pretty neat thing to see from the boat's angle as well. This next video is actually speeded up to double time because it's pretty lengthy, but we're now across the road. We are heading down a pretty substantial hill that will take us back to the water and refloat the boat. So as I said, the lockmasters are kind of standing on the carriage and riding along with you. They are phenomenal, and it's been a bit of a rough season at Big Chute because there have been some mechanical breakdowns. So they have worked really hard to make sure that everybody can get through safely. While you're waiting on the Blue Line, the lockmaster came on over and talked to us to get more details about the boat. They could tell we were a Silverton. They couldn't tell what model. So when we told them they were a 410, she wrote that down. They go back and they kind of decide how they're going to load the carriage to make sure that they're putting the right size boats in together. So really top notch. They're finding out all of the details. They're making sure everybody's moving up to the front of the Blue Line. And they may not necessarily take you from the first person on the Blue Line on back. They may take some smaller boats with some bigger boats so that they can maximize the trips, because it does take several minutes to do this trip. But you can see we're getting a little bit closer. If you look closely on the on the port side, you'll see a staircase there that might give you a little bit of an indication about how steep this hill actually is. You'll notice that the carriage does stay flat. So basically, you're not tilting down the hill where the boat would be in danger of going nose first, diving down into the water. It's really an amazing engineering feat how this cart works. And while you're visiting, you can see the original cart, much smaller, and it is off to the right side of the existing current Big Chute. But that was the original Big Chute. So here you can see we're about to hit the water. The boat in front of us is really about starting to float, at which time they drop the straps, and you are floating again and are able to exit the lock. We also have a little bit of a view from the stern because it is kind of an interesting look at how this works. So the boats you see there on the upper left are on the Blue Line. They're going to be next through. You can see the video is jiggling a little bit. This is a bit of a bumpy ride. It is not, smooth. It feels like a roller coaster. You're kind of bouncing and bumping your way through as you're going along. So quite interesting, and really not something that I had expected. So a little bit more here, you can kind of see the bumping. And again, this video is speeded up to double time, just in the interest of not making this a really long video for you to watch. But that's a great view of the tracks. It's a great view of the pulley system that is actually what's powering this and pulling the boats across. So again, the front view, the boats are getting ready to go into the water. And that is the back view looking back up the hill. And this is where the hill just begins to get pretty steep right about there. And you can see the pathway working down. So definitely a great ride. Help the lock masters out by following their instructions. If it's crowded, be patient on the blue line, and as boats are taken, everybody on the blue line should move forward so that the next boat is ready to go. So that's the boat in front of us pulling out. We are now floating, and you can almost kind of see the moment when we really hit the water and the boat really starts to float again. The straps will drop just like they did for the boat in front of us, and we will say goodbye and thank you to the lock masters and be on our way towards the final lock on the Trent-Severn, which is the Port Severn Lock. That is lock number 45. So we have been through the rest of the locks, and we are excited to lock through at Port Severn and go on to Georgian Bay. The Port Severn Lock is the smallest lock on the Trent-Severn with a width of just 23 feet. It is also shorter in length. So in a lot of our videos, when we showed you pictures of the Perch in locks with other looper boats or just other boats in general, there were often boats side by side, one on the starboard side, one on the port side of the lock, often 2 or 3 boats deep, the length of the lock. That's not possible at Port Severn, which creates somewhat of a backlog. So when we arrived there, there were several boats already waiting. It was a windy day, which makes it a little bit uncomfortable. There are 2 of the lock operators manually turning that gate for the Port Severn Lock. And I believe that is Sea Life, a looper boat that is in the lock. And at this point, after we had helped several other boats, again, the wind was really not anybody's friend that day, but it was our turn to lock through. So we were in there with some other boats, just barely fit with the door closing on the lock, and that is us exiting our final lock on the Trent-Severn waterway and heading out onto Georgian Bay. There are 2 AGLCA sponsor marinas in Midland. One is Bay Point Yachting Center and the other is Y Heritage Marine Resort. We stayed at Y Heritage. It is an enormous resort, literally hundreds of slips. A really good restaurant on site with lots of options and beverages and breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a good marina to have a bike or an electric scooter or something to help you get around because it is so large, but really kind of great service, easy to tie up into, and there is a view of it with the lovely maple leaf flag flying there atop Y Heritage Marine Resort. So that was leg 52. You can see we were actually underway for about 2.5 hours. We did have a short wait at Big Chute. The lock opens at 9. I think we were on the second carriage that went through, but a much longer delay at the Port Severn Lock since there was a backlog there. We went a total of 16 nautical miles, averaged about 6.4 knots, and we reached a maximum speed of 10 knots. So that's another look at our trip from Big Chute to Midland. We are now ready to explore Georgian Bay and then onward to the North Channel before returning to the U.S. So here is a final look at today's leg. We'll be back with our next leg, which will take us from Midland to Parry Sound, and we'll also have a looper lifestyle video about the Parry Sound area and the things to do there. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.